Hey JavaScript warriors, welcome to day 7 of the 30-day challenge where we dive into exciting coding exercises to sharpen your skills. Today's problem is a super common in coding interviews. It is the classic string to integer problem. Ever wondered how to convert a string like space minus 02 into an integer while ignoring spaces and keeping numbers in the correct range? I know it sounds tricky, but don't worry, we will walk it through the solution step by step and you'll be coding this like a pro in no time. By end of this video, you will have a rock solid understanding of the problem along with practical coding techniques to handle it. So let's dive right into it. Now, what is the problem? We need to implement a function which is called my atoi, which converts a string into a 32-bit signed integer. But it is not that simple. We need to follow some special rules. First rule is we need to ignore any leading white spaces. If we have an input of space minus 042, the result that my function should return, it should be minus 42. Even it should be non-string actually, but it should be just a number just like that. So that is your first rule. The second rule is to handle the sign. So we will check the first no space character to see if it is a plus sign or it is a minus sign. If it is minus, the result of course should be negative, and if it is a plus, we assume a positive number, and if there is no sign, we assume positively by default. Now, the third rule we have is extract the digits. So what we have to do here, we'll read consecutive digits from the string. As soon we encounter a no digit character or we reach the end of it, we have to stop reading. This is an example right here, I'll paste. For example, the input we have here is 42 ABC. The digit we have 42, then we hit the first no digit character. We have to break right there and return only the 42 digit right here. And the fourth rule is that we have to clamp to the 32-bit range. So if the number is too large or too small, we need to clamp it to fit within that 32-bit range. So the minimum should be what is displaying on the screen, and the maximum should be again what is displaying at the screen at the moment. So for example, if we have here this example right there. So if we give this input, it is full digit, but you can see this input here, it is greater to this number here, which is the top range of our 32-bit integer interval. So this result will be climbed to actual that number. So if you calculate it, you'll find it equal to this value. So if our function takes this number, which is outside our range, overflowing, we need to clamp it or round it off to the max or the corner of our interval range, which is this number right there. The same thing will happen for the negative side as well. And of course, we have to handle a scenario if there are no valid digits are found, means the only characters in our input, we return 0. Otherwise, you just return the integer with the appropriate sign. Now, if you want to talk about algorithm, so what is our plan? How I want to tackle this in the code? So I'll paste for you here the steps and we can go through it together. So basically what to do first, we need to initialize a pointer that will go through our input. Okay, so we'll be using that pointer to scan to the characters in our input. And the first thing we want to do, of course, is that skip any leading white spaces. So if your inputs have any white spaces, like I showed you an example before, in the beginning of it, we need to skip it, okay? We just ignore it. Now, the third thing we need is to check if the next character is a plus or a minus, okay? So we can determine the sign of our number. After that, we start reading the digits one by one in our string and build the number as we go through them. And then, after we read those digits, we need, before building our new number, we need to check for any overflow. As you remember, we said the return value, the return integer, should be a 32-bit signed integer. Then the last step is that you'll return the final result with a correct sign. Now, there's a lot of talking, and let's start doing. So what I've done here, I just defined a function and it accepts a parameter which is your input, and then in the end I'm just cancel logging that function with few inputs, and also I'm commenting there the expected output. So when we finish our function, of course we need to test it and it should behave as expected. Now let's go and start coding, and while we are coding we have to keep in mind that this needs to be a time complexity efficient and space complexity efficient as well, which means our solution should be very fast and should not slow down our program in real time world, right? So first thing we have to do is define the range of our interval, and there will be just a constant right here. That's how we define them here. I'll call it um, I'll call it init max, which is the maximum value for our interval, and init min for the minimum value of our interval. And if you remember, we said that we'll create a pointer that will help us to scan through our input and check each character within our input. So I'll define a pointer called I, and it will start from 0. So this one will help us to traverse through our string. Next thing, I'll just create a variable that will be the length of our string, so s.length. And then what we'll do as well, we'll create a variable for the sign. So if you remember, one of the rules is that we need to keep the sign. So if it's negative, it should be negative number. If it's positive, it should be a positive number. And if there is no sign, by default, it should be assumed as positive. So what I will do, I'll create a variable called sign that will hold the sign for me. So we'll say, okay, if it's positive, it will be 1, and if it's a negative, it will be -1. So that will help us in our coding logic. So I'll default to positive. So if you don't find any sign, by default, our return integer will be a positive. Now next thing, of course, we need to define a variable that will hold the result that will return later, and I'll call it result, and that will be starting from 0, of course. Now step 1 is that we need first to check if there are any leading white spaces and ignore them. So ignore any leading white spaces. So the way we do that, we can use the while loop, and we'll say while the pointer is smaller than the length of our character and our si, so the string at that pointer or the character at that pointer, if it is equal to a white space, then just skip it. So we'll just move our pointer one level forward. Okay. Now step 2 we said is that we need to handle the sign. Okay. So handle the sign. So again we will use a loop, but this time an if loop. Okay. And we will check because the sign can be only at one pointer, but white spaces it can be many. So that's why for white spaces we use a while loop, while for the sign we just use an if statement. Okay, and I said before loop, that's wrong, it's just a statement. So if our pointer is smaller than the length of our character, of course, and if the character at this pointer, if it's equal to a plus or si is equal to minus, then we have a sign. So what we will do here, we'll update this variable created here. Okay, so sign will be equal, but will be a condition here. So if my character at the pointer I, if it's equal to plus, then it will be equal to 1. Otherwise, it will be equal to minus 1, means it is negative. And of course, we hit a sign, then we need to move now forward because we handled that, so I plus plus. Now, after this, we need now to go to our string. So, step 3. Now we have to extract the digits from our input. So here again we will use the while loop, okay, because we want to scan through each character and keep going. So we will say as long the pointer is smaller than the length of our character and si, so the character we are hitting, it is between 0 and 9. So if it's greater or equal than the character 0 and si, it is smaller or equal than the character 9, then do the following. Okay, so we are hitting digits. That's mean now we have to start extracting. So first thing we want to do is we need to convert these numbers using a charcode add function in JavaScript, which will give us the value of our stringed numbers. So if you remember, this one's a string, right? So we want to convert them to number. So the way you can do it, we can define a new variable called digit. Okay, and what we'll say is that our character that we are checking, I want to convert it to its code. So we'll use this function, and this one the index of the character. So the character is only 1, so of course the index will be 0. Then I'll minus it from the character 0, and I'll convert it also to the code as, and of course the index 0. Now, if this line sounds very confusing, before we move forward, let me explain what this means. So, this line basically converts a character, like for example, the string 5 or the string 7, from the string into an actual numeric value as like a number like 5 or 7, right? But why this conversion we need it? Why we need this? So in programming, like the character 5 or character 7 are not directly treated as numbers. They are stored in the computer as an ASCII codes or Unicode values, which are numeric representatives of characters. For example, the string 0, it is represented as 48. The string 5 is represented as number 53, and the string 7 is also represented as number 55. So we need to convert these characters codes back to their actual digit values, like digit 5 or digit 7. Okay? Now, I hope this one makes sense. If you do a little bit math, then you'll find out that minus will make sense to do it, as it gives us the actual value of our digit. Now let's go back. So we created our digit. We need to do the check of the overflow. If you remember, we need this one to stay within our interval. Okay, so step 3, basically we are checking the result that we already have, okay, before we update it. Check first, is it superior already, then the init max divide by 10, or if it's equal to that number plus the digit you got here counted, it's superior than the init max, the remainder of 10. So basically we're checking the last digit right here. Okay, so if this one here is exactly equal to this division plus the digit you build is superior to this value right here. Okay, if it is, that's when you add and you build your new result, it will be overflowing. If this is overflowing, then don't build any new result number, because depending on the sign, you just return either the top of your range or the minimum of your range of your interval. Okay, now if it's not overflowing, then all is good. Let's build our result. So we'll say results equal to previous result we got, multiply by 10, because we'll be moving our digits to the left to build it, plus your new digit. Oops, new digit. And then, of course, increment your pointers so it goes through your while loop. When your while loop is finished and completed, now step 5, return the final result. And what you will do here, of course, we need to combine the result with the sign as well. So we'll say return result multiply by the sign. Easy as that. Now let's run our test and see if this is working. So the first one give us 42, which is great. The second was minus 42, 1337, 0, 0, and then you have the min and the max of your interval because these numbers are overflowing numbers of our interval. So this solution works amazing. First thing because we handle the time complexity as well. So it is ON, that means we traverse through the string only once. And also the space complexity is only O1. So we use a constant amount of extra space. So this solution ensures efficiency by handling leading spaces, signs, digits, and overflow conditions in a straightforward way. Now, mastering problems like string to integer is a key step towards aching coding interviews and writing efficient JavaScript code. Now, question for you. What other string-related problems have you faced in interviews? Share in the comments and let's crack them together. And for more daily coding challenges as we continue our journey to JavaScript mastery, make sure to subscribe and like this video if you find it helpful.